people who were working on resource networks like that. He's about taking those seniors, those people with the experience, the one that Uno Mas said, the experts, about taking those experts and pulling them off the new feature development, and putting them on the less sexy, stuff like, hey, fix an elevator.
That's an example.
Okay. All right. So I want to talk about the 3 areas that were covered in the letter to the channel. We'll start with stability.
Yeah. So
I know this is going to sound like a simplistic question, and there are probably lots of Star Citizen. I can see them in the chat right now. JJ Land 614 says no one cares about bug fixing. Is everybody right? Is JJ Land 614 right? Everybody? Sorry, there was no reason for me to do that.
Sure.
So lots of people who have followed these shows and they know parts of this. I've seen the people in the chat. I already know this because I watch everything. This is a show for everybody.
Right.
What does working on stability really mean? What is we've had a lot of platitudes here, and platitudes are necessary. They're helpful to explain things, but translate this into real world shit for me.
Right.
I use my one swear. What does working on stability actually translate into as far as action goes?
Well, it translates into aggressively monitoring. What we call internally stability covers like some of the very simple metrics, like do servers crash, right? Or do hybrids crash? Do clients crash? And together, do these cause client disconnects, right? And so all these metrics go into what we call basically stability, but it goes further than that. Those are just basically the indicators, like the big level indicators. What stability is like things like bare bone things, like are you able to successfully connect to the game?
Can you log in?
Correct. Can you do successful interactions? Like, can you go to your ship and press F to join your cockpit and then not it take 35 seconds? Is it consistent and reliable? Meaning, like, is it like this all the time? Or is it there only sometimes, right? So stability is about consistent and reliable experience interactions. It's also, when we work on stability, we're talking about improving the observability. So teams that, when you guys are playing the game, you have a very immersive experience, and issues that affect you during your gameplay are part of your bubble, right? We need to be able to see those issues from the outside. So from the server side, from the cloud environment side. And so improving observability gives us that, because there are many systems in the game that have not been instrumented to be observed, right? And so sometimes, some older systems, I'm not gonna name ATC, are gonna have like some hiccups that we can't even see, but players report to us, and then we have to investigate, but we need more observability. So that's working on stability is part of that. Changing systems that typically are problematics into self-healing systems so that they can just repair themselves. So when they get into a case that we know, we just modify the system to make sure it tends towards a state that's functional. And the observability comes into play to make sure that it does function. Working on stability also means establishing budgets. So budgets for errors, budgets for performance. And so that affects everybody in the company. But if we talk purely on stability, it's all about, is the content that we've produced here or the feature we've produced here using too much resources, whether it's CPU, GPU, server calls, bandwidth, storage, networking. So reinforcing those budgets, going about finding the offenders, right, that go above these budgets and chasing them down, solving them. So that's stability work. Reducing error rates, obviously, that's part of it, that's the resulting. And the challenge with working stability is that, especially in light of server crashes, is that it's a fog of war. So you can launch a game and you're like a version of the game, and there's one crash that's going around. We can identify dedupe crashes, right? So we know what they are. So we're looking into one, and then we're like, oh, if we fix this one, it's going to be very stable, right? But then when you fix that one, that allows the program to continue. and then more bugs show up, more crashes show up. So it's a fog of war. It needs a constant care and attention. One thing we've done this year to help that is that we have a much more robust hotfix process that frankly we use a bit too much, but it does give us the ability to get some fixes out when we see big problems right away.
Yeah, I
but
haven't really been
to
saying
contribute to
too
that
much,
fog of
just
war.
kind
So
of
that's what
listening
working
to
on
him, but
stability for me is.
I'll
It's
bring it
all of
down a
these
little
issues
bit.
together.
Do the same thing for performance.
Sure. Performance is it's a larger one, and so performance touches on both the client, the hybrid, and the server. The hybrid is the replicant that takes care of the networking, and so performance is about obviously frame rate to begin with on the client and on the server. We talked a little earlier about server optimizations. It's about loading times, so making sure that the load times are acceptable in all kinds of areas. Like I'm not just talking about the loading screen. I'm talking about loading in assets, streaming in an area, fully initializing full location. Right, that's the load times we're talking about. Memory utilization. So making sure that we use efficient memory. We don't go above our memory budgets. Same thing here. The keyword is budgeting. So we need to have a way stricter budget to work on.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Finally,
Yeah, definitely.
Resource utilization of your machine in general, but also
I changed
memory.
the volume, so
So latency and bandwidth, connectivity, and stability of the connection in general that need to be improved. And so that's what working on performance is. So stability is one area, performance is another one.
there you go.
All right, so who works on these things? Because this isn't, so we're talking about this major change here. We're taking people off of features and putting
Should be
them
good
on
now.
new features and putting them on existing features. Existing work. This isn't something that vehicle artists do. They get to keep doing their thing for the most part. This isn't something that somebody who makes a distribution center for the environment team does. This isn't something that somebody who makes a really unfortunate heart-shaped bed
Problem,
for the
DC,
subscriber
no problem.
program does.
Appreciate you watching.
It was performance.
Who's the person who's actually who are the people that are actually doing this work? Who's changing to do this stuff?
So it's again engineering, right? That has a large focus on stability and performance, but it's also, we have a team, an online team that takes care of what we call site reliability. So these guys are definitely the first watchers of all these metrics, and these guys will call out issues that we need to solve, right? And then they will loop in engineers. So that's the core of the people working on this. But I kind of want to push back on what you just said about
yeah, man, I
the guys on the
appreciate you
ship
coming
team
in.
don't have to do performance, right? Which I think that sometimes the way things are made in the game have a very big impact on performance, right?
Now you get to hear it from the CTO.
I can give
explain
examples,
a lot
but
of the
like
things that we
areas
talk
of levels
about.
that are created with hundreds of entities, right? Instead of using like a bare minimum, or there's techniques to use where group merging certain objects need to help reduce the actual effective size of things. So the teams on content are also kind of on the hook for performance, less so on stability, but they're on the hook for performance. And so they're not totally free, but they are less in the line of fire, because typically an engineer is needed to identify a problem first, and then it might reach a content team, depending on what the issue is.
What's the difference between an engineer and a programmer?
It's basically the same thing, almost.
Why do we use both terms?
I don't know. I think it's when you use programmer when you talk about a coder, and you talk about an engineer when he's got an architectural approach to it, I guess. But they're very similar in my mind.
Sounds like full of shit.
Yeah, a little bit. But
You're not going to count that one.
where's the jar?
Engineer
you need a
is like
drink?
back end, while
Right,
a programmer is more front end, basically. But they
Let's put
both
things into
do
motion.
programming.
Yeah.
So
It's 2025. We've got our mandate. We've got our directive set for us by Chris Roberts. We touched a little bit about prioritization and delegating responsibility. So I want to talk about this. It's no secret that anybody who's watched my stuff for years knows that I like to have the conversation that no other game company would ever dream of having. And there's nobody from another game company that would sit here for 2 hours and answer these kinds of questions. So thank you. I want to talk about delegating responsibility. Let me think about how I want to put this. Obviously, we have a lot of talented engineers and programmers across all of our studios. But some are juniors and some are seniors who have all their own specialties and aptitudes. How do we decide who works on what? Because when I look at, if I were sitting on the outside, and I used to,
Sure.
if I were sitting on the outside, I would look at some of the decisions that have been made over the last couple of years. Elevators have been a plague forever. A transit system has had a refactor or two in the past and whatnot. Those were all before server meshing, which will now require another. If I were sitting on the outside, I would look at this and wonder, what the hell are they thinking from time to time?
Sure.
Why? So I would like you to talk about how this process is done. I know you said that you're not the one solely responsible, but you could speak to this process and how this responsibility is delegated, not just to what bugs get worked on, but who
Right.
works on this stuff. Talk to me for a bit about that.
Well, so it's an interesting problem, right? Because fundamentally, all these talented programmers and engineers are human beings, right, behind it, and so they. Even Paul, I mean, he does have a beast mode,
Yeah.
but he is still a human. And I think that one of the challenges that the teams face regarding this, not necessarily prioritization, let's talk assignment first, right, is there's a certain level of ownership, right? If I wrote a system, then I own it, right, in a way. And then further iterations or bug fixes on this thing, I will be the best qualified to do it because I know the code. Anybody else that needs to go in this code is going to have a little ramp up, right? And sometimes we can't pay that ramp up, especially at the pace at which, I keep saying that in our project it's different. Typically, we don't release a game before it's in a better state. Than
Most games don't run a live
Correct.
game environment in the middle of their development.
Exactly, and that, I call it the cost of shipping, is what hurts us the most, because now any priority issue for the live patch needs to become absolute, right? But so back to assignment, right? So one programmer writes a system, he owns it, right? So we're going to try to go back to this person when there's bug fixes or items to go to.
They're going to have the least on-ramp time.
Yeah, exactly. But now sometimes it can happen that that's a junior developer. It can happen that it's a senior developer. It really depends, right? Some systems also end up with no owner. When there's churn and people leave and there's replacements or people move on. There's a lot of internal movement at CIG where people want to change their specialty, and so you want to keep that distribution fair for the people in there. Like, you don't want to assign someone on pure bug fixes for 5 years because they're not going to stay with the company, right? You need to balance this out in terms of how you assign the work. Now, again, I'm not talking prioritization, but assignment, right? Typically, we're going to try to pair juniors with seniors to encourage growth so that these juniors can become seniors and then we can depend even more on them, right? And so that's another constraint, that sometimes you need to spend time from a senior on a specific issue to help a junior on another issue.
Sometimes you'll have two people on an issue, not because they can make the baby twice as fast, but because that's how you train that junior to become senior. And that's one less person that could be working on something else.
That's right.
Because this is part of their training and this is their growth. Okay.
Correct. There's also, so we talk junior, seniors, right? We make it simple, but there's also leadership, right? So lead developers, like, I don't know, most people know this, but the lead developer is not necessarily the best developer of the team.
Wow. Name names.
No. But the lead's responsibility is management, right? It's making sure that the issues move and that our plan of action is sound, that it's vetted, that it's code reviews, make sure the quality is there, but also just orchestrating the team, right? So typically a lead should spend roughly 40% of his time doing management on the team, right? So Leadership is also a key element in that. Even if you pair people and you have a million things going together, what is the drumbeat is the leadership, right? And so you need to have all those combinations to be able to have a healthy engineer team. And so you want to avoid overburdening as well. So sometimes you have some developers that come into the company and they're really good, right? But they're juniors, right? So they're learning fast. They have a lot of energy. They're going for it. And so path of least resistance, we're going to go like, oh, well, look, can you look at this? Can you look at this? Can you look at this? And at some point, that person's overburdened. And we have to release our patches, so time constraints come in. And so code quality goes down, right? And that's an issue we have to battle every single day.
Now, we had to release our patches with those features in the old system. And, you know, you're referring back to how
Yes.
we did it before.
Yeah.
In this new system, in this new way, it's a patch every month, but it's what is ready to go into those patches. We've said some version of this before.
Sure.
And let's just be super honest. We haven't been super good at sticking to the philosophy. You know, it was after 3. I think it was after 3.0. It was after that really long wait for 3.0, where, you know, some of us had to grow a really stupid beard.
Yes.
That it was okay. We're no longer going to wait for features anymore. We're going to do this quarterly patch, and then if a feature isn't ready, we're not going to wait for it. It gets pulled out. We weren't so good.
The famous
at
go, no,
adhering
go
to-
process.
Yeah, we weren't really good at that.
Which we internally called the go process.
Yes.
Which we moved away from.
I'm very happy to hear you admit that. The go, no go process was a bit of a joke. It was the go process. And it's because there was this mentality here where we thought that we were a feature-driven project. Every patch people expect X number of features to be in there. We have to make these targets in order to keep people engaged and stuff. And it was just this Ouroboros of shit. Oh God, that's 3. Where it was just, we were constantly chasing our tail and not getting where we needed to go. Now, that's not to throw the past aside.
No.
We're super proud of what we've accomplished here. But there's a point where doing the same thing year after year,
The same way.
the same way, and we always made changes here and there, and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So this year, and this whole thing that we're talking about today, and we'll talk more about on ISE next week, is it's time to try something different. Now, this is incredibly scary for us. I'm gonna go on the record and say we have been a feature-driven project since the PE was first introduced in 2015. We doubled down on that after 3.0 at the end of 2017. To stop that and to turn all of our focus internally, to turn it all inward, and to say to this incredibly talented a programmer, you don't get to work on the super sexy hot new feature. You have to work on elevators now. That is going to create problems for us, keeping people engaged, keeping people interested, and stuff like this. That's when patches come out, and when we get to April or May or whatever, and people are like, where's my new feature? We haven't had a new feature in so many months. That's going to create problems for us on the marketing side and stuff like this. This endeavor is going to create struggles for us in how we position the game, and how we market the game, and how we attract players to come in and play. But we've tried the other thing for so long, and it's collectively what I'm seeing from everybody, from Chris to Aaron to Rich Tyler to everybody down the line, is something I've never seen in 10 years.
What we talk about all the time, like
is this,
there comes to a point where they have to switch gears. We've
finally reached a consensus that we've done it this way
at that point
enough.
Right now.
We have to try this now, and we have to make this experience better. You know, famously, we were watching a big streamer jumped into game on Friday, had like 17,000 viewers, and 17,000 viewers were just watching him fall into an elevator.
I'm ready for more content.
We had already made this decision.
I think that's a great idea.
Has been in place since December.
Get some more
we were all just
content
watching
in the game.
Man, this can't come fast enough. So this is scary.
Work on the bugs that are already persistent in the game.
I want to ask you another question about this assignment and the priority stuff. I just touched on it. Say you have something unsexy but super critical.
Right.
and the fix is a long and tedious process. Rewriting the transit system, and it's going to tie someone up for the next 2 or 3 months while they work. Maybe it's longer. Is this something you put on a senior because it's super critical, and then you end up tying that person up for an entire quarter of the year? Or is it something that you stick a junior on because you need that senior doing 3 other things instead? Is this not the ultimate developer Sophie's choice, and is this not what we've struggled with for a decade, at least the time I've been here? How are we fixing this now?
Well, so previously the answer would have been junior with some support, right? That's what we would have done before. It would have been, no, we can't compromise the feature. You know, this work is important. It's going to be transformational for the PU. This fix or this rewrite, you know, we're going to give a support network around someone that's in the team that's not necessarily one of our superstars, you know. And I mean, I want a team where everybody can grow into a superstar, you know, but sometimes, you know, you have to be in the middle, right? And so the previous setup would have been something like this, right? Where we would give a support network, but the person in charge would have been, you know, not necessarily like the leads and the people that really push the needle, because those would be on transformational features for the PU. The answer this year will be no. We're using our transformational players to come and solve these problems for us, because they have to be solved, right? Like we keep talking about transit. It's not, you know, transit has touched 1 million people at CIG, and we've tried to, you know, keep it running for a while, but now it's time to put, you know, a real effort behind it, right? Which is to basically take resources from the transformational elements and go and fix the foundation.
So we've now called ourselves out on our own BS, and we're now putting everybody where they need to be. How do you decide whether that old feature is fixable or whether it's so far gone that it needs a refactor?
Sure. Well, so that's a good question, right? Because sometimes the worst cases like this is when a system or an issue is like almost fixed, right? Where like a developer comes in and is like, oh, I have a fix for this, right? But what we need to do now is also look at these features to answer that question, which is the way the feature or the system was constructed compatible with what the PU is going to be, or what the technology behind the PU will be, which is a combination of the streaming technology that we've built before, that has been a very complicated and complex system, even on its own, without server meshing, and then the systems under streaming and server meshing together. And so there are systems in the game that are not adapted to that approach, right? And so when we look at one of the key problems that we see in the game, we're going to look at the underlying system, and if we need to rewrite, it'll be because, yeah, like it needs to be rewritten to take advantage of streaming and server meshing properly, right? Versus trying to patch and kind of cobble it together, right, to make it work. So that's how we make the decision, is really we're going to have to look deep in all these things to decide which ones need. We've already done some of it, like we're calling out some stuff already.
Yeah, I literally saw a meeting earlier today where you're literally presenting every single engineer in the company. And it's like, okay, it's like, and it was a collective effort. It was okay, so it's where do we put this person, where do we put this person? I've never seen in the time that I've been here such a granular kind of overarching, okay, no, we need to reevaluate everything. All prior assumptions are done. Yeah. Let's look at the entire field of players we have and decide who's supposed to go where best. And stop everything, fresh start. That leads me to my next question here. So we're a company of near or over 1,000 people. I can't keep track across the studios in the world. But there's still a limited number of these engineers and programmers in the company. Delegating them between these tasks is hard enough.
Yeah.
But you've also got this thing called Squadron 42.
That's right.
Over here. And in October, we flashed up a big 2026 on that.
Yeah.
I was there when I saw the 2016 way back when, and Chad Zamzow spoke for all of us with like, what? Anyway. So we stayed away from pointing at a year for so long because we grossly underestimated in last time. But now we've done this. So you've got this
Goalpost.
I was going to say hangman's noose, but goalpost is much more positive sitting here.
Yeah.
That's got to get done too.
Yeah.
So what is this split like? Is this just an even 50-50 split? This many of them are on Star Citizen, this many of them are on Squadron 42. Is it 60-40? Is it hard? Is it flexible? Are there Joker cards that bounce between the projects? Does Chris have a veto every 3 months where he gets to rearrange the people? How does this split work?
So that's an interesting question because it is, we are making 2 games. There's some good news, right? Because a lot of the gameplay systems that power the actor, and that power the core of the game are the same between the 2 games. And so improvements on one end result in improvements on the other one, plus or minus the online versions of these features, right? Let's say we take one team, right, which is the most important in this one, like the gameplay teams, right? That's where we have to be more fine-grained, right? There's this thing that we have to be careful about, which is context switching, right? Obviously, building a single-player cinematic game and building a multiplayer MMO-like game are similar, but the context switching between the 2 projects costs time, right? So you want to find a scheme where you have the resources on what you're trying to achieve at each milestone. Like Squadron 42 has its internal milestone and this cadence that it needs to respect this year, which is extremely aggressive, in order to get a game completely complete by the end of the year and ready for 26 release.
I mean, you have to do that.
And so there
Especially
are resources that are more suited to the type of things that Squadron 42 kind of needs right now
grow,
in its polish phase and its finalization phase for all the levels and all
it's not like they don't
chapters.
Want to be successful.
And so obviously these people will be favored to work on Squadron 42. So there's a series of people that are on there. I don't have an exact percentage, but it's not 50-50 because there are also things that are built on the PU that are beneficial on that side. And so the thing that if Jens was here with me, he would say the thing we need is flex, right? And so flex is when we need reinforcements, we can get them, right? And so we have a model now where there are a series of engineers that will work, dedicated to Squadron, but we can flex on both sides depending, right, on the milestones. And the 2 projects have now a cadence that's adjacent.
And this game
so we kind of know
is ambitious
at every
enough for them
milestone
not
what
to be.
Star Citizen needs and what Squadron needs. And so we can flex
people
accordingly.
Are going to
and
play
these
this
features
game.
are kind of a lot of those features are similar in both ends.
They don't
and
have
some
to
of
worry
the
about
bug fixes
that
that we need on SC are also needed, right, on both sides, especially actor-related bugs. And so it's a tricky balance, right?
I hear what you're saying, and it makes sense. And I was in that meeting where Chris and Jens were talking about the need for flex and stuff, and I agree. It's my first show in 2 months. Maybe it'll be my last one. How did... There's a phrase that comes to my head when I'm listening to you. Says it's this jack of all trades and master of none thing. Now, that's not precisely analogous to this, but if people are bouncing, how does any one thing get done? That's the first question I have there, and I know there's no easy answer to this, but you agreed to come on the show and you agreed to take the uneasy question, so I'm taking advantage of our decade-long relationship and putting you on the spot here. Yes, it's absolutely important if this thing in Squadron.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Has to be done because it will unblock 50 other people. So yeah, okay,
because
we'll
I'm
take those
still
2
mad
people
at
from
what they
Star Citizen
did to
for 2
Anthem.
weeks and get it done. And that's a worthwhile use of flex.
Hot.
And I
still
understand
go and
why that exists and
re-download
why that's
Anthem
important.
sometimes.
But how do you
But that game
keep
could have been
that
so
from
much
becoming
more.
just this,
And they just
and we just left with this two amorphous
go.
blobs that never get finished.
Yeah. The key is in the specialization. right? So we have teams like, I can give an example, like the mission system team, for example, are highly specialized in the online mission system, right? And so,
Oh, and Elliot Maltby, don't leave him out.
and Elliot, right? The Kid Rock of missions. But this assignment, right? You take the resources that are good at one element that one project needs, and you can dedicate it. Then you're not losing anything from the other side, right? The flex obviously is there in your extra kind of chunk of resources, right? Every team has like core members and extra members that can flex, and so
Me too.
the idea with this
That was
has
such a
been to
great
make a
game.
plan where we
Such a
can
fun
actually
game.
focus on the
Such
things
an
that matter,
amazing
and
concept.
we pick what we
They had the
think
right
matters,
timing
right?
and everything,
So
you know,
our
with
player
Iron
experience
Man
team
being
on the
out,
SC
Marvel.
side helps us, like for the bug
They
fixes
had
that we're
the
gonna be looking at
people,
in priority.
and they dropped the ball.
We know what those are, so we
dropped
make
it.
sure those are covered. So it's about not just
It was
prioritization and
very,
assignment
very
and just blatantly going SC squadron, you know. It's really about looking at what do we want to achieve? And on SC, we want to achieve a better playability. And so we're going to commit resources to that. The flex will come only when we ship, right? That's the moment where flex actually happens, so end of milestones. And so the impact at this will kind of be minimal because we minimize the context switch on the key resources. Like leadership is a key part of this. The right leads in the right places make a big difference.
Okay.
Those ones need to not move. That's the
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's not a question with an easy. It's not a question with an easy answer, and it's not a question most marketing shills would probably ask their execs
Sure.
live on
yeah.
the internet. But like I said, we're
going for it.
We're going for it.
Right? Exactly. I did too. And
I
on
want to
the
talk about one more topic before we get to a
dang,
topic.
I can't
that
even
I've
think of the
listed
name
in
of
my
it
notes
now,
as
but the Colossus one,
persistent buggyverse.
I made the Hulk Buster.
And that's Alpha 401.
I made the
so
Hulk
last
Buster,
Week, it was just last week, right? We released Alpha 401.
Yep, I sure did.
I saw people online, people that, if I'm being as frank with those people as I am with you, probably should have. Some people expected the silver bullet patch. Like there was a letter in December, and they thought in January there would be a silver bullet where everything was fixed. And I personally find that expectation a bit silly. On the flip side of that, though, these are people who have been waiting.
Yeah.
They've been waiting a long time for us to figure this out. For us to have for us to come in from the cold and realize that so many years of doing it this way, it's time to switch to do it this way. So I understand the frustration and everything is justified, if I'm being completely honest. It was not a silver bullet patch.
Sure.
This 402, it might even go to PTU today or tomorrow. We're here, so I can't see the chats that they're trying to put on PTU. You know, for the end of this month, will not be the next silver bullet either.
Right.
As I said at the beginning of the show, this will be a thing where month after month we patch without new features, but just new content built on existing features and bug fixes, and slowly we start changing the temperature of the water,
Yeah.
of our persistent universe. What was my question?
It sounded good anyway, but
I'm sure I was going somewhere. Is this the approach? Is this the? When can we start? So I see what I read, and what I read is what I wrote for myself is dumb. I don't want to
go
ask
off
that
script,
question.
let's
I want to. 401 did not solve all the problems.
no.
Is it a legitimate improvement over 4.0?
In many areas, it's a drastic change. Yes. Especially for the issues that affected a lot of players during the break. If you played during the break on 4.0 preview, like a lot of very dramatic problems have been solved in 401 or hotfix, right? Because the 401 also includes all the hotfix from 4.0. So it is fundamentally, a better patch, but it regressed in key areas that are very problematic.
Yes, I'm looking at a chat right now.
Very.
Drastic?
Yeah.
With
Yes.
with a
yes.
lot of emojis.
From the observability standpoint, right? Not from the. I think that in terms of the forward-facing elements of the patch, we have regressed in 401, but from the infrastructure level, we have actually made a step forward, and so it's a 50-50 one.
It's a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing.
I would say so. Yeah.
And the 1 step back just happens to be the part that the players see.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I know there's we're about to jump into this.
The Buggyverse.
Just I'm on the verge of something here, and I'm trying to figure out what it is in my head, what I want to say here. I guess what I really want to ask is, okay, it's not going to be in one patch. It was never going to be in one patch. Any expectations that it would be in one patch or 2 patch, frankly, a bit silly. But we're all, when I say we're all, I mean not just the people who play the game, I mean the people who make the game too. We're all frustrated.
Yeah.
We're all tired. We're all exhausted of logging in and seeing people stuck at one in position and seeing elevators not showing up and people falling through trams and stuff like this. It's not going to be one patch and it's not going to be 2 patches. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 7. I guess the question I really want to ask you before we move into the Jira section here is this plan going to work?
I think so. But what it needs, right, is, and I think Chris's letter kind of sets the commitment. That's what we needed, right? Going from the previous way of making the game to this new way, like a company of our size takes time to shift gears and change direction. And so even though you're like, okay guys, this is our focus now, reorder priorities, assignments, it takes a while before it actually takes form, right? And you need the people in the teams to really grasp what we're after, right? In terms of increased playability, what it means for them in the day-to-day, right? And I think that we have the commitment from the leadership to change this, and we have the means to do it. So in order to support this effort, right, it's not just we're talking about priorities and orders, and that's one part of the puzzle. But what the other part of the puzzle is to make sure these teams are properly supported to do this, right? It's in paying the tech debt that's been plaguing the project for a long time, that we've been kind of dealing with, putting in the corner, right? Tackling some of it, but then, letting it build up. And I think that we need to attack that head on. And to support our teams, it's about helping them improve the output through better process, better pre-submission
Spectrum
checks,
Unlimited. Look,
better validation.
There's a
building
building.
the
There's
tools that will allow
an
them
actual business
to have
for
confidence
Spectrum.
that when they put a fix, that it's fixed.
Look at that.
Or that when we say a bug is fixed,
That's pretty
that
cool.
it is fixed, which is,
See, I like finding
let's just
these
say
little
that
Easter
it's
eggs
been an
like
issue,
this.
right?
No.
Yes.
Yes, no. Many have been the times where I've seen everybody from you to Chris to Jens in the chat saying, they read a report on Reddit or they see something on Twitch and YouTube and they find the Jira and the Jira says it's fixed.
Yeah.
And it's like, I thought this says it was fixed. And that happens for a lot of reasons. We've talked a lot about how there are multiple causes for the same outcome. And yeah, that cause of that outcome was fixed, but now we've just exposed a second different cause for the same outcome. It's frustrating. We're doing a lot of. The problem is Jira. Something in the chat. We're doing a lot of talk here. And we still got some more talk to do. The proof will ultimately be
In the action.
in the action.
He's in the
in the month after month, patch after patch. There won't be a patch every single month. Like I said, we're currently looking at about 9 or 10 on the schedule. We actually have a meeting tomorrow where we're going to kind of hammer that down and have a better idea. Certain things
like the little
affect the patch
waterfall
cadence.
holograms they got on the buildings right
But
there.
yeah, but more patches this year than any year prior.
The level of detail,
less of the feature work, far less of the feature work, and more of the content and the bug fixes. The content that doesn't require new features. Like somebody in the chat was just saying, do less events. It's not the events that are problems, the events that are built on new features. Like I was about events built on existing feature work and stuff can still be fine. That's part of what we're looking at.
There's a landing pad right here too.
The proof is going to be
land right there.
the proof. It's going to take.
Well,
it's going to take this year.
Ultimately, it's just the product, right? That's the thing that counts. Is what's the output, right? Does the output get better? Are we still dealing with the same problems that we've seen before? Did we actually solve any of those issues, or are we still going to look at, interrupted missions, or any of these bugs that are plaguing us, right? And I think that's the key, right? And that's how we should be measured. It's does this new method work? Is the product improving, right? And its quality.
Yeah. Kid Casper, first-time chatter, says, did a dev ever play Siege of Orison? Yeah, Siege of Orison is a great example of an event that took substantial feature work. And the feature work that was underneath it was the stuff that was not ready for prime time. It's not exclusively the idea of an event that's bad. It's how you build the event, whether you build the event on current, existing, proven technologies, or whether you try to do something crazy. And we're still going to try to. Let's be real. I've been here for too long to sit here in front of everybody and say we're going to stop trying things new. That's not who we are. We're going to dramatically reduce the risk. We're going to dramatically reduce how far out over the edge with new things that we do. There are going to be moments this year where we still try something new here and there. And hopefully it works better than in the past because of our new tech preview situation, because of the new methodology. There may be 1 or 2 moments this year where we try something new and it still bites us in the butt. That's just, I've been here too long to even remotely hint at saying otherwise. But on the whole, what I've seen from people at every level this year is something I've not seen in the 10 years I've been here, and that is this collective realization that we have to change and stuff. So I'm more hopeful for this year than I've been for other years. It's not going to be a year full of a bunch of exciting new features. It's going to be a dramatically different year with different content and stuff. It'll be interesting to see how it goes. It's scary because we've never.
No, yeah, it's completely different for the project for sure.
All right. Persistent Buggyverse.
Yeah.
So. So it's not all going to be fixed in 1 or 2 or even 3 patches. But if I'm allowed, I think I can speak for everyone in the community when I say what the F about some of these long-term issues. So these long-term existing issues that have plagued the game since 3.24 or longer. So I got together with folks from the community team, Tyler and Lenny and Freya and all those folks. I got together with people from the player relation team, Bayer and his folks and everything. And
they have
even
so
got
much.
A few of these from Chris
See,
Roberts
because
himself.
them focusing on content. Look,
I mean,
this is just one
and
area.
get some status updates on.
Sure.
This is
of a
basically
planet.
the part of the show where I
One
hold
point
your
of interest.
Where we dive in.
butt
They
to
can
the fire.
have so
Sure.
much
Right?
stuff going
Yeah.
on.
So
just
in no
where
particular
what they've
order.
already
Hang on,
created, right?
Hang on, before we start, right?
They don't
So
even
I'll
have
be the
to like
messenger.
add
So
anything
we
else,
did a little
and they
prep,
have a whole
right? We looked at a couple of
another
these because I
star
needed prep.
system now
Unfortunately, I don't
that they
know
can
everything.
You don't
actually
know the current
use
status
as
of
well.
every single major bug
So,
in the
like,
game, Benoit?
No,
I
do not.
mean,
I wish.
Get out.
I mean, that'd be great.
Adding this content
But
and being
I
able
did
to
scavenging
do
hunt
that
to make sure that we got at
is
least an
going to
update on most
be a
of
game
those.
changer.
So
We're going to have
that's,
so
you know,
much stuff to
we'll
do.
Get out of it.
You
All right.
know,
Go for it.
I want to start with server and shard instability.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to read my notes here. We've got frequent login issues, including being stuck at position 1 in the queue for extended periods, shard locks, the servers becoming unresponsive or dead with players extensively discussing strategies for finding working servers, often relying on joining friends' instances. So let's tackle these one by one.
Yeah.
Login issues and being stuck at position 1.
So This one we're actually deeply investigating right now. It looks like, so we have, and I'll go deep with technical details here to properly explain, not just the status report. So matchmaking, right? So when you click on that button, join the universe, you're talking to the matchmaking service or the matchmaking system. He will find one of the shard instances that's available, right? All these shards report their health to make sure that they're, doing good, that if one of their servers is not good or their FPS is not in a good condition, it always reports a score. And we will always try to match you to either something that has shard affinity to you, or
Shard affinity.
well, it's either your player is already in that shard, right? That's the ultimate affinity, or you've been in that shard before. So we try to have a level of shard affinity. Now the problem with stuck position 1 is that we've matchmade you on a shard. And now the matchmaking service is basically telling the shard, this guy's coming. That's called a process called authorization. And for some reason, now the latest update that I've got this morning on this is that the authorization call sometimes will take multiple minutes to close out. And so we don't know what the cause is on this one yet. It's kind of a new identified condition, but that's one that we need to hotfix absolutely on live in order to get that back in there.
So that's one that when we figure it out, is fixable by hotfix. Some things require a patch, some things require a hotfix
Yes.
that can be done on the. So that's a thing that can be fixed
Hotfix.
any day of
Now,
the.
I can speak a bit about the hotfix, how it works, right? Now, I don't like to use the word hotfix for everything, but that's the word we have for now, right? Because not all fixes are necessarily hotfixes. Some of them are just, they need to go out. But so what we cannot fix right now is a server change. So a change that goes on the game servers. That's one of the easiest things to roll out. So we can actually make a code change, and then we start deploying it, and then your game servers will slowly start updating, right? And that is the easiest one to roll out. But there's some requirements for this. There must be no data change, no asset change, and the network compatibility of the build needs to be maintained. And so that means that there are some things we cannot hotfix because it would cause a client incompatibility. And so there are some bugs that we're like, we have a fix, but we can't roll it out, right?
We have to wait for the next patch window.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? Which we are talking about in interest of this to have now like maintenance windows where we can actually roll out data fixes, right? Where we now need to force players to upgrade their client, but that would allow us to actually, take the environment down, also do some maintenance. We rarely do live maintenance on the environment just to, change things. We kind of try to keep them the way they are, but this will allow us to actually perform live changes more aggressively. So we're trying to nail the process now for that. And so the second kind of thing we can change is a hybrid fix. Now those are very hard to do because a hybrid restart will disconnect all players on a shard, and so we can't upgrade a shard that's already running. And so we have much fewer game shards now than before, and so that means that disrupting them will have a drastic effect on the live environment. And so those fixes are a bit of a problem. So typically it reflects in the number and the name of your shard when the hotfixes roll out.
Chat is just spamming. Do it! Just do it! One of the things that we don't do that a lot of MMOs do is have that regular Tuesday downtime or something like that. And those are the times where those things are necessary for other games. Is this something we've considered?
Yes, that's what we're trying to prepare for now, is to have an official maintenance window. That we're not thinking about systematically doing a downtime, but we're thinking about scheduling it, and then we'll let players know before that happens, and then we'll be using those moments to do infrastructure changes or upgrades that normally we would have to wait for.
That would be. I'm just looking at chat right now. There's nothing you've said in the last hour and a half that's getting the reaction. They're just like, yes, give us a maintenance window. Fix your shit. 4.
No, that's 5.
Is that 5?
I think so.
5. Load times went way up.
Yeah.
In 4.0.
Yes.
Way up.
That's
Benoit.
right. Yeah.
Especially for pyro.
Pyro.
Right.
And frequently
You
players
know
are
that-
actually
you
time
know it's
out of their
toxic.
load.
Yeah.
What gives?
So, interestingly, now that's still being investigated, but the current hypothesis on this is that the way the pyro system was built. First of all, the the requirement when you connect, right? What the hell's the game doing, right, in that loading screen? And then you open the console and there's stuff flying around. What is it doing, right? It's going through this context establisher set of tasks, which are like all the phases for the connection, right? Currently, when players load into Pyro and have a long load time, it seems to be related to the way the system was built, where there's an entity in the Pyro system that holds the spacescape for the system. Right now, we're peeking behind the curtains of how the levels are made, but there's a requirement for the CET connection, right, that requires that all the entities that the client needs to load need to have an authority assigned, right? Now, so this is directly a server mesh change. And so if an entity that you're loading doesn't have an authority yet, which could be any server in the mesh, right? If one of them doesn't have an authority yet, then the load time will have to wait for this entity to gain an authority. Now, how can this entity not have an authority? So our current hypothesis is that if the server that is hosting that Pyro Spacescape entity, which has a giant radius, so every client loading into Pyro needs that entity.
So you notice he's using words
if
like
the server
our
that hosts
theory.
that entity is currently
Because when you got a code base like that, it's probably like
then all players will have to
hundreds of
wait for that
thousands, if
server
not,
to do the full provisioning loop,
millions of
boot
lines of
up,
code, like-
acquire, load the data, acquire the
you really
entity,
think
and
you're
then
going to be
player
able to
will load it.
find something.
For some
like,
players, that overrides that busts the time it needs for
people
the time
have
for
like
the
this
login.
misconception
So
about, because
that's our current
most
lead,
people's understanding
and we
about
think we have a
technology
fix,
is
but,
what they
you
see.
know, we're obviously
right?
that's another one.
So
that
most
we
people
would
see
roll
the
out.
front end,
I
they
think it's a
see
code
how
fix on the hybrids that we
things
can
work.
actually roll out for that.
You know,
While you were
when they
giving that
when they
answer,
turn it on, it works. They don't
Chris Roberts
understand
just
what
messaged.
all, just like what he's
It says,
explaining,
Benoit,
like
are we
what
having
all is
login
happening
issues again?
at the same time that you're just sitting there
Guillaume is
watching that
like,
loading screen. Like it's other
poking Ahmed
processes
because
happening.
Benoit's on STL
It's not
talking
just
about
loading into the memory. That's
So-
not the only thing that's happening. But that's what most people, you know, they
Get
have this
off Benoit's
misconception.
back,
Like, it's like they oversimplify
Delete.
it,
Do not hit enter.
and out of you know just sheer
Okay, so
ignorance, you know, not knowing.
I know I see
know,
people
so
who are
that's
stuck in this
cool,
thing,
but
who are waiting. Like they shut their client down and they log back in. They shut their client down. Like, is that helping their case,
No,
or is
it's
that
not.
hurting their case? In
Well,
this?
so I have a lot to say about that. So
I'm gonna head out.
So on you know, everybody kind of has a recipe for fixing login issues, right? A lot of them involve disconnection, shard hopping, loading into AC, rebooting twice, you know, printing a document, I don't know, right? That is actually one of the things that we've identified as missing in our testing process. So we do some load testing before we launch a patch. And so we test with clients logging in, logging out, and everything's great. What we're not testing is launch client, persistent universe, Alt F4. Launch client, persistent universe, AC, right, Alt F4. Client, persistent universe. And so a lot of the issues that we've seen in the 4.0 release, when we put in the persist hanger flow, for example, that allows you to log into your hanger, the system for this needs to move your player, we call it unstow, your player into the shard. It also needs to unstow your hanger. Now, when players are constantly logging in and out of shards, now you've got multiple shards doing this process for you, and they need to complete that process. We've identified a ton of concurrency issues with this in 4.0, elements that we didn't test for because you test the load, not the repeated concurrency. And so that's one thing we've identified that we absolutely need to add to our testing process, because it's one of the other things, I've talked about this before, the difference between PTU and live is like a 20x increase.
Yeah.
That's also one big difference, is that on PTU, players don't shard hop that much.
No, one of the forever things that if there's a double-edged sword of PTU, and there are many,
Yes.
but this is like the one that's always amused me. People are more patient on PTU than they are on live because they recognize that they're helping us, they're helping the development of the game, they're doing a job, and that patience is necessary and wonderful. But it doesn't make for an effective test of live, and it's yet another reason we have to go to these live environments sometimes, and we don't discover these things till live environments, because live is where Hyde comes out.
Right.
You know, so many people in PTU are Dr. Jekyll, and they're all nice and knowledgeable and restricted, and then live environment is where. It's interesting. It's. All right.
Well, that's one of the key differences, right? And so, a lot of the issues that are plaguing us right this second, right, are still remnants of that. That we are tracing a lot of them. I spent, a lot of time on Spectrum during the break, during the vacation, workation. Actually digging into a lot of those to be able to make sure that when the team would come back, that we'd have, some traction on some of those.
Last question on servers, because then we're going to get to the character stowing and repair here.
Yeah.
What are shard locks, and why do servers become unresponsive?
Well, so that second part's
little question here.
Right. So, shard lock. We never really call this shard lock. This is like a community term. You're never really locked into a shard, but your character can only be into one. And so, if you get match made into one of, let's say, USE1B 010, everybody's favorite shard, which it is true, that shard is cursed. It's telling you right now, it's always 010. I don't know why, but that one is always the one.
Take it out to the shed and shoot it.
It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter which patch. The USE 010 shard, for some reason, is the bane of our existence. Anyway, so you go play there. Your character will get unstowed. So Hybrid will unstow your character, moves it from the global database that allows you to go anywhere to that shard. Now you are, according to the community, shard locked, right? Because you're playing in that shard right now. What's supposed to happen is that if you quit the client, or you get disconnected, or a client crashes, when you come back, you're going to match made on this shard again, right? Now, if that shard is no longer available during the time where you decided to come back or whatever, then that's going to give you a nice little 60K error, right? Which will say, hey, your character is there, that shard is no longer available. Now, what that means is that behind the scenes, there's a process that's taking if the shard is crashed, there's a process that's currently processing that shard and then will stow back your character. So it's time. Time will fix it, right, in this case. During the 4.0 preview, some players got into a state where the character could not get stowed back. That was a a bug that prevented that from happening. And so their character was kind of seemingly corrupted. And so we had to go in and fix a lot of those. That caused a permanent 60,030, I think is the one, where basically some players were stuck in that mode for a long time. So we had to actually do manual actions to solve that. But otherwise, in most of the time will make your character go back to the stow position. And then once you're stowed back, you're able to go back in there. So that's what we call, or I think that's what the community calls shard locking.
Yeah, it was definitely the 630. It's building a reputation, it's coming for 30K's crown right now.
Slowly.
Let's talk about elevators and trams.
All right.
Let's talk about elevators and trams.
We didn't talk about repair. You don't want to talk about repair?
Well, actually, that question was mostly about the 6030 and the stowing. You basically covered all that stuff.
That's kind of true.
So, elevators and trams.
Yeah.
Broken or missing elevators in various locations, preventing access to hangars and other areas, or simply trapping players inside. Trams that either let you fall through the floor or yeet you into lower orbit. My question to you:
What
the fuck?
That's 6. So, brief history, right, of transit. This is a very old system that's been in the game for a long time. And transit in the context of streaming is already a non-trivial problem to solve, because and I need to dive into the why, so to explain a bit, the complexities behind it. But so the transit system is composed of multiple components, right? You've got peripherals, so that's, for example, the button you press to call an elevator or a tram. It's the indicators that say, hey, the tram's coming in, this amount of time. Those are peripherals. You have gateways, which are locations where a carriage can stop at. So, for example, if you're in Lowerville, and you go to the train, where the train stops, it's like a station. That's called a gateway. You have carriages, which are either elevators, trains, trams, all these things that move along a path. And then they go from gateway to gateway, and they respond to orders that are submitted from peripherals. All sounds nice and dandy. What's the problem, right? So in any game, any other game that doesn't have full-on level streaming, all of these things are always loaded. So the manager, the piece of code that actually is managing the fulfilling the orders and moving the carriages in general, or has the logic of the carriages, is always, all this network is streamed in. It's all loaded, so it's always available. It knows where the carriages are, it knows what's happening, everything is there. In our environment, because of our SOCS technology that allows us to have more performance on the servers, because we unload the rest of the zone, that means we unload those carriages. So think about your Lowerville train that you see stop at you and then leave. On the server, if nobody's on the track, it doesn't have a carriage there. It's unloaded, right? And so the current iteration of the system actually destroys that carriage and will recreate carriages when it needs it, right? And there's been a ton of issues with this. So that's the first part, right, is the streaming part. That makes it a bit more complicated. The second part is that the way the system was built initially, it would fulfill these orders to those, send an orders basically. You call the elevator from your hangar, I need to send a lift there. So the system is going to tell the lift to move. The lift moves on its own, right? So you will jump and then do the actual path. We want those to be physicalized, so they're actually following certain paths. Now, the issue is that combined streaming with these orders and state is lost in certain conditions. And so the system just needs a whole lot of changes on its communication layer to be reliable. And it needs a fundamental change in how it fulfills these orders. Instead of just sending a message to a carriage and hoping for the best, the transit manager needs to be actually always tending towards the state that it should be in, so that it can self-heal for any kind of issues, right? Whether creating the carriage failed or streaming out and losing a piece of it, the system needs to change to be able to properly do that. So that's what the new system that we're writing is going to do. It's going to solve these communication issues with streaming, and it will make the system self-heal. But we also need to do fixes to the current system immediately, right, to get that working. So now we do have a crack team on this right now, where we've significantly increased the size of the group that is looking at the current elevators issues, which we have absolutely regressed on. And they're looking at adding the self-healing component I just talked about directly in the system. So I was happy to hear that we have now proper reproductions for at least a couple of cases where the gateways are basically becoming defunct. And so you call the elevator and it never shows up, right? That's the number one case that we see at the moment. Or the other one is a lift shows up, you press a button and it doesn't move, right? So that's when the transit manager's lost this carriage, or the gateway is no longer usable. And so now we have those reproductions, and they're not just happening at to players. Now we have an actual case where we're able to actually go down and we've seen what actually is going on, so we can put the self-healing things I just talked about to fix it.
So in the past, when we've talked about some of these issues and why they haven't been fixed or whatever, it's because we've had this aversion to doing double work.
Yeah.
We don't want to work on a Band-Aid when we know the long-term solution is ripping the whole damn thing out and replacing it with something else.
Try to do minimal change on the existing.
Yeah.
Instead.
What you just described, though, is doing both. Though. So at present, I just want to confirm this here. At present, some amount of persons are working on writing a brand new transit system built for the server meshing reality.
Correct.
And all this stuff.
Yes.
But at the same, that's going to take X number of months to do. Not wanting to wait for that because
we need to fix.
We need to fix now.
Right.
There's also another group of people focused on a short-term self-healing fix to the current system.
Yes.
That may not fix everything, but will dramatically improve it. Is our hope.
Yes. Well, we want it to function the way it should function, which is all the time, like reliable, right? Now, it might mean, because we are still going to have the issue of the streaming out and some error handling, that it might take longer for a lift to arrive in certain cases, but it will arrive, and it will.
Because it'll have that error checking, it'll have that self-healing.
Right.
So the idea is that it won't just not show up.
Right.
You won't just fall through it. You may wait twice as much as you were used to.
In those cases.
But
yes.
then it will show up.
Correct.
Well, that would be something. At least for the short term.
Yes.
That would be something.
Yeah.
Okay, and that helps me explain why we're doing both.
Right. No, because we
why
need to
we're
fix
doing
it
short-term
right now.
fixes and
Exactly.
long-term. Okay, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, definitely.
Somebody asked, do the elevators in Squadron 42 work?
They use the same system, but the streaming bubbles in Squadron 42 are a lot higher, so they will stay streamed.
Single player. Yeah. And then many people are like, just build stairs. Like, who knows? Maybe we can convince Ian and Nix will be all stairs.
Yeah.
No.
Or ladders, maybe. I don't know.
Hangars.
Yeah.
Hangars. All right. Failing to spawn ships correctly. Platforms getting stuck. Ships being destroyed while they're stored.
Yeah.
I saw that one. I'm like, what? Like, or hangars being assigned incorrectly. One by one. Where do you want to start?
All right, I gotta come clean first. On the ships being destroyed when stowed, that was 100% me. So, we were looking at some.
Hold on, look right in the camera.
Yes.
It was you, Benoit.
Yes. So that was a back-end change that we did to try to alleviate some of the load that we were seeing on some areas. And one of those side effects that was unplanned was that the location ID of ships weren't being updated when they changed. And so the way the ASOP terminal, again, moving sands, right, does its reconciliation, which shows you what's available for you. It actually uses the location as the key element to know if a ship is actually, available. Not only is it stowed, but it needs to be in the right location. Now, this change that I had made for optimization did cause, for a couple of days, the issue where the locations weren't updated, and so all your ships that were stowed in lower locations would show as destroyed. But they were there, but they would show as destroyed in ASOP. And so, yeah, I'm gonna take the blame for that one. That was me.
Is this like if a branch falls in a forest and nobody can hear it? Does it really? The ship's not technically destroyed, but if it reports destroyed and you can't call it because it reports destroyed, isn't it destroyed even if it's not destroyed?
Yeah. Well, actually, claiming it would actually destroy it too. So technically, it's destroyed.
Right, but we resolved that one.
Yeah, that one's resolved.
Okay, so let's get back. So let's talk about failing to spawn ships correctly, platforms getting stuck.
Right. So let's talk about hangars first. Right?
Okay.
So, people that play more on the PTU know how the system works, but it's actually a bit special in that, first of all, the hangars are instance. So they're instance on your shard. You have access to your hangar based on, your ownership of it. But all the hangars on a given ATC gateway, so these are the actual hangar doors on the stations, right, are all stacked on top of each other, right? So that's why that there's been bugs in the past during the PTU cycles for 4.0 where
You can hear somebody
oh
else's
yeah, that was that, and that bug took a while to fix because it required technology change. But that was also crazy. Like the sound was just, incredible. And so what that means is that when you're in the station and you want to go to your hangar, you have two options. One of them is use the lift. Now we just talked about the lift, right? When you call the lift, it will actually unstow your hangar, create your hangar, and then give you permission to go there, right? Right the moment you hit that button. So there's a lot of things that need to happen in right suggestions. Then you enter your hangar. There's render culling that comes into play that will make sure that you only see your hangar, even though everybody's on top of each other, that physics only affect you, right? So they're all stacked. Now, one of the big problems that we're dealing with right now, and we've been diving into it for a while, is that the ship elevator, has a couple of issues, right? I've seen, an Avenger rising from the grave through it. I've seen, ships spawning on top of each other, and so there's two problems behind it. The first one is that the platform itself is it's moved, right? It's not a physical movement, so it's not physics driving the movement. The ship is physics enabled. That is a recipe for disaster. Correct. When you see flapping like that, it's like the combination of things, right? And so, so we're currently like discussing a solution because there are limitations that the way it's made is the way that they were limited to make it, but we need to fix it. So it's either both elements are statically moved or they're both physically driven. You can't have this combination. That's what causes all these things. So that's why sometimes server FPS is good, performance is good, all your ships are going to go up, that platform, everything's great. And some other times, half the ships is in the platform, and that's an issue. So currently we're rechanging the layout and the setup of the hangars to set this up properly so that it never happens again. The unstow issue is actually, we think, at the moment, a bug where in the timing of how when you leave your hangar, we need to stow back this hangar, right? Because if you go to another shard, we want you to have access to your hangar. The timing of this, if there's a ship on the pad when you leave, there's a possibility in the timing where the ship will be stowed with the hangar instead of being stowed on its own, and then the hangar is clean. And that condition is not properly detected when you unstow the hangar again. And so in the cases where, for you as a player, you're not going to see a difference in that you leave with the hangar on the ship on the pad, you leave your hangar, you come back on another shard, and you just go to your hangar, your ship's going to be on it. But if you call a ship from the station, and the ship was carried with your hangar up and down, then the ATC is not going to know that there's a ship on the pad, and he will attempt to spawn it there, and that's where crazy happens. And so currently we're looking at that complete cycle to make sure that the timing is correct. And there's also a couple of other issues related to this. Some corruption of data can happen in that case. And so we have an entire team dedicated to the hangars right now, just making sure these issues get solved because they're affecting everybody. I'm happy to report, though, that one other issue that we had with the hangars got solved related to how you exit the hangar. So
usually in a ball of flaming wreckage.
Well, or after 25 minutes of queuing where the system tells you, hey, in 100 seconds you'll be able to leave. And so so we did hotfix a change to the way that what I call the hangar queues are managed, right? So again, the ATC manages the queues. It's managing how you exit your hangar, which doors open, stuff like that. And at concurrency, so when a lot of players are in the same location, leaving and entering, this queue and those timers would get completely out of whack. And so it would either grant too much time to someone to leave or enter. We're talking 10x the time, or give you literally 3 seconds to leave. And then players would get stuck in the doors, where the doors would go, and then would try to squeeze in it, the doors would squeeze them out. and then the rest is a little bit of a party. So we hopefully have something on live already alleviating this, but we're still tracking to confirm it completely that it doesn't happen again.
For the folks that are still in the chat saying, please just give us staircases, the hangars are instanced. The stairs would just still go to, the elevator is a portal between the real world and your instance world. Even if you spent 5 minutes going up and down stairs,
Right,
you would still have to hit a portal where you have to queue and push a button and it makes a portal for your thing. It's the same thing. An elevator is just the mechanism. Stairs don't solve it, unfortunately. Hard work of developers and engineers solve it. What's the obstruction tuning and stuff? I saw. I've seen images internally of the elevator won't go down, and then Brett or somebody on player experience or whatever will jump in and go under the thing, and they'll see a dragonfly stuck under the elevator that stops it from going down.
And so the problem we talked about physicalization of the platform is definitely related, because then the obstruction code that will, you can't bring down the ship elevator.
Right,
because there's
exactly.
obstruction.
And what you'll find, DC,
if
is
there's
a lot of the
speckle
complaints that
dust
people have
under
is
that
just because
platform,
they're
it's
just
not gonna move,
uninformed
right?
about
Which
what
was,
causes
let's
the
just say,
issues,
a
and
bit
that's
way too
understandable.
aggressive. And
It's
so
understandable
I think at
that
this point
you
we're doing
have the
cleanup
complaint and
to just
you
try to stow back.
think
If one of your ship goes on a
something
platform, we'll
would
deal with it and stow it back.
solve it.
But it still.
But you
needs
have
work
to
make
concede
sure that,
to your
even if,
own lack of
I
knowledge
remember
and say, well,
one of the
I'm
early
not a
4.0 preview bugs
programmer,
was like
I'm not
the water
an
bottle would
engineer, so I
clip through
can't
the
really
platform and it
say
would prevent the hanger from
if this
functioning
would fix it or
completely. And
not,
so
because
now
I
we're
don't
trying
even
to,
really know
again,
what's
in
causing
the interest
the
of self-healing for these systems, right? It's about
about
let's
that.
not
But
just
what you
work at
can
preventing
say
the
is, hey,
condition, let's also
we
work
really
at
want
what
you
if
to
it happens
fix
anyway,
this,
right?
because it's
We need
really
to
affecting
do
the way that we
aggressive
play the
cleanup to
game,
keep the
right?
system working.
And that's a
Like
valid,
the
that's a valid
hangars,
comment. You
the
can't really,
elevators,
you can't argue with
the
that,
hangar doors,
right?
the ATC systems.
You
are
can
all
only come
part,
back
in
to
my
that and
mind,
say,
of what
well,
I call the traversal.
we
of the
understand
game, right?
this is not the
And
priority
bugs that
at
affect
the
the
moment.
traversal of the game
This
that prevent
is-
you from going to
so
your
this
ship
is
and
what we're
leaving
doing,
or entering in and refueling.
and then as a
they are of the utmost priority.
voice
They
at
have
that
to be
point
solved.
as to
Because
know
if that doesn't
whether or
work,
not I
then
choose to
the
be
game
a part of
doesn't work. They're
this
critical.
or not.
And lastly,
Yeah,
I'm
most
looking
times
at
they're gonna choose
the
to be
Secure
a
for the
part of it
hangars being
because
assigned incorrectly.
who wouldn't want to be?
Location ID.
I've been
it's
riding
got
around
name.
here for what? It's been over
Well,
an
I've been
hour just flying
investigating that.
around
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
to
You're not
different
responsible.
I'm not responsible for
places,
it yet, until proven otherwise. But in this case, it seems that there's a condition where you can have more than one hangar in a location of the same size, which should not happen. And when the system gets in this state, it might pick one or the other, which can lead to you not having a hangar at all. So that's the thing that we're trying to find out how it actually happens.
Okay. Second batch of hangar issues.
Sure.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Hangar lifts that clip players' ships and destroy them. Doors not opening and closing correctly. Losing your personal hangar completely. And I have the overlapping with the physical audio. We've covered that one.
Yep.
So hangar lifts that just clip the little tiny corner of my spaceship and make it go explode.
Sure.
What's physicalized there, Benoit?
Well, so I was going to touch a bit on ship cleanup, and not necessarily ship cleanup, but density cleanup in general. We talked about the physics events, right, in the past, earlier in the show, right? So the physics events are a godsend for the server performance because we evict all these debris that are causing intersections, slowing down physics. And so that's one of the reasons why we've been able to get performance of the servers up in general. Now, one of those components, well, the same system, is actually responsible for a pink glow that shows up on a ship that will just pop it, right? And so that's part of how we try to resolve the physics intersection for ships, right? And the way it works right now is that it has a smoothed number of frames where if the physics engine is like heavy intersection, at some point it will go like, okay, like something needs to happen. The way we handle that event is still a bit too aggressive right now. And so in some cases, it triggers a heavy intersection and will pop out the ship. But we don't want this to happen to attended vehicles ever. And so we're working right now at adjusting that flow so that only unattended vehicles in full intersection for a very long number of frames are cleaned up. And so right now it's a bit too aggressive for this part. But the distinct glow, pink glow, is we added that to make sure we could identify those problems which we expected would kind of happen until we tuned the system properly.
We are at 2 hours.
Wow.
I want to keep going.
Yeah, let's go.
Pete, Dave, Lauren, you okay? Honestly, I'm not even joking. If you need to go, just leave the camera switched on Benoit.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to see this face anymore. Just leave the camera switched on Benoit, and we're going to keep going. Are you cool? Okay, but seriously, if you do have to go, do it. Just wave and be like, it's on Benoit. I can see it. I want to keep going.
Yeah.
Inventory and item persistence issues.
Right.
Items are disappearing from inventories, ships, and storage containers. This includes bought items, looted items, mission cargo. What's causing this? What are we doing to resolve it?
Well, so on the inventory system, right, there's, or I should say on the item system. So the way the entities are tracked, entities have entity classes that define what they are, right? And there are, I want to say, tags or configurations we can attach to entities for things that we want to automatically clean up, right? Again, we're back on cleanup, right? Because it's important. So, for example, AI, characters will have what we call an auto stow or auto bury policy. Auto stow will bring something back to an inventory after certain conditions are met. Auto bury will destroy an entity if certain conditions are met, right? Automatically. So that's our ability. That gives us our ability to go, this thing is good, let's say for 12 hours, and after that, we can get rid of it. This is true for like debris or things we spawn on the side or things like that. And so a lot of people have reported losing items, for example, from CZs that were acquired in CZs. Mm-hmm. That's, at that point, it wasn't even a system issue. It was really, those items were flagged to auto-destroy, basically. And so some players looted armor and were like, started using those armors, and then when the conditions met for the auto-bury, those items disappeared, right? I almost lost this one. And so that was a bad setup, right? And so now I know that a lot of those items have been retagged, right? And so the auto policy will not apply to them, or not if they're attended. Again, it's all about making sure that the right tags are on them. So that explains some of the inventory things. There was one that I was looking into with a player actually recently, where when you read your inventory, there's caching going on, right? And when your inventory changes, that cache is supposed to be expired. In certain locations, for some reason, that cache, like especially in CZs, was causing some problems. So opening your inventory in the CZs would be empty, and then you open it again, and then you store something in it, and now other items show up. That's a telltale issue of the cache. So we're actually revamping the query cache right now for these elements to make sure it's always consistently updated. Your stuff is there. It's just
it just can't show.
It's cache as nothing. Yeah, exactly.
With long-term persistence, it seems like it seems like there's always some level of something disappearing.
Yeah.
Every patch.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
So LTP is a fairly complicated system, right? But if I can simplify it as much as I can, when you stow something in an inventory, and we take that item and we process it. So let's take a easy example. Let's say a single gun, a P4. You have a P4. You put it in an inventory that you own. A record is created for it's an ownership record that says this player owns a P4, right? Now these records we write to all the time. If you unstow that gun, meaning you put it in your hands, right? We destroy that record because now it's in play. So you play with the gun and then you stow it back. That recreates the the record. So these records should always represent what you've got in your inventory that you own. Now, where it gets complicated is that these things can be hierarchies that contain items that then need to be processed. And so we don't persist everything to LTP. Only a select set of entity classes that designers control will go into LTP. For example, ships is a good example, things like that. Now, when we stow a ship, we look at its entire hierarchy, and there might be things attached or loosely left in the ship that are LTP.
On the list.
Correct, and now they have to be added in. So also with LTP, there's also sometimes perception issues that things should persist, right? Like, for example, a classic case is a ship left in the shard between patches, right? You're flying your ship in 324 and we release 4.0. If you leave the ship there in the shard, right, you don't have an ownership record for it, right? The ship needs to be stowed in order to be there when we recover it. But we do think that there are still issues with some of the recording events in cases where ships are claimed, because at that point, when you join into the next patch, let's say you have a ship you bought with UEC and you store it at a location. That ship actually, its recorded ID comes from your long-term persistent record of that ship. And in the case where you claim that ship again, we think that there might be some cases where the inventory, the record data doesn't follow, and so the LTP record is not recreated. And that could be a source of some of the lost ships in the LTP data. But overall, we're not happy at all with that solution in general. And a bit like you were talking about trends, that we want to do a two-pronged approach on this. One of them is we want to find the cases that are left in the current system that don't behave the way we want them, but we're also putting significant effort at a different system for this, which is that we don't want to have to wipe the database at all. So we want to be able to keep your inventories intact between patches and have a forward compatible model where we can actually keep all this data there the way it is, and then
like checking out a
migrate it.
file from Perforce. So you're not destroying it. You're
Correct.
copying it out. Nobody else can write to it. Nobody else can mess with it.
That's right.
It's yours.
Yeah.
And then when you stop it, it goes back. It goes
Correct.
back in. So it's not a non-destructive.
Yeah, and
like
so
checkout says.
and so our goal with this is that's a fairly large endeavor. I mean, like, we're not going to fix it in a second, right? We're going to still hot patch the current system to make sure that the cases that we've seen are fixed. But the longer term fix is to make sure we only persist the data that's going to be compatible. So differentiate between the serialized variables on entities that are important to a ship from those that are runtime only. That's a big difference. So those will be stored in the global database, and between patches, our goal is to just keep that database like this. So there's no, we're getting records back from a thing that has been recording for 3 months. It's like, no, it's the exact same inventory that you have on the live patch and the new patch. So there's no loss at all, right? So that's our target for this new LTP solution.
And those are obvious. Those are bugs and inefficiencies and stuff. There has still always been this. There's been this existing problem. I think it's been here since I've been here, but I think it's really started to really gain steam in like 2017, 2018, and it's been forever. It's this unique item recovery.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure there was even a thread today that reached the top of one of those channels where it's just like, we get all these cool things. You get cool things packaged in with your pledge purchases or whatnot, and then you're too afraid to wear them. You're too afraid to use them because you fall through one planet, fall through one lousy planet, and you lose it forever. We're not going to go into it here because there's another show dedicated to it, but that is absolutely prioritized this year. It's prioritized in a way that I've never seen it prioritized. The talk is stopped and the work is starting. So we've got a signed off design, and people are on it right now. And
I mean, the thing that speaks a little bit to also the change in mentality
Yes.
we're trying to affect, which is tackling things like this, right, are not just bugs and quality issues, but also playability issues.
yeah.
right, that need to be addressed as well.
It's going to be a 3-tiered solution. Again, we'll have a show where we go through it all. I'm filming with Declan next week on this like this. There'll be a short term that'll help a lot. There'll be a long term that'll help even more, and then the super long term is crafting. And basically, you just you get blueprint for everything. You can just make your own, and it's like that. So you never ever have to worry about it. So it's a multi-stage thing. But this first stage just got signed off, and it's in active development. And
you excited?
I joke. Not joke. I say it with all sincerity that the same conversations the backers have, we have internally just 3 weeks earlier.
100%.
Been.
I mean, sometimes
grinding our gears.
Sometimes it's scary
for everything.
Sometimes it's scary.
So that to see actual movement on this right now is exciting.
Yep.
One last hanger call out before we go. The aggressive ship despawning mechanic.
Yeah.
Sometimes ships are despawned while people are still inside them.
Yeah, that should not happen ever. In fact,
it's nice to hear it said out loud.
No, the system is supposed to be made that we have a passenger count on each of those ship entities, and if there's a passenger, even if he's not piloting, and even if it's not his ship, we should not be despawning those ships at all. And so that's definitely on the lookout right now as to why it happens. I mean, there's a couple root causes. Unfortunately, for it just looks the same, right? Again, if you don't have the pink glow, right? The pink glow is the telltale tells it's physics, right? It's the physics detection, which we're going to ease up. If the ship just despawns out of midair, right? I've seen this happen with ATC. Sometimes has with the timer problem that we fixed before had an issue where it could despawn your ship mid-flight when you left, which was egregious. I think that one has been solved, but jury's still out. I want a proper confirmation on it. The one where your ship is considered unattended and you're still in it and it despawns is completely like that needs to be solved right, like hot fix right away.
Okay. Mission bugs.
Yeah.
Now we went through a refactor with 4.0 that reduced the mission options, hopefully temporarily, but we're still seeing a lot of the same issues that we saw before. Arriving at a location and having no AI spawn, mission objectives failing to register, and cargo disappearing upon completion. The Fight for Pyro event going on right now is particularly affected, with many players unable to complete it, or various aspects of it due to bugs. Save State in Chapter 1 was like walking through a minefield trying to figure out which parts worked and which parts didn't. The Net 402 has more mission stuff in the content. It's like, talk to me about missions.
Sure.
Please. Elliot, this one's for you. I gave you crap on the other one, but I'm doing this for you, man.
Okay.
Help us out.
So, let's start at the beginning, right?
Okay.
What did we do in 4.0 for missions, right? So the way missions worked previously is that we had first one server with all the entities, all the 100 players playing on it. When you played missions, there was an invisible entity created on the server somewhere. The location doesn't matter, right? That would manage that mission, right? And the way the missions work, if you can picture it in your mind, is that there's a mission management module, and then when you reach certain locations, right, when you stream in that location, a mission module at that location is going to actually kick in and has its own logic for, like, if you're picking up a box, for example, let's say a box delivery mission, you get to that location, there's a mission module that pops up. Does the pickup logic. When you unpick up, it's like, oh, you need to go to this other one. Then there's another mission module at that location. Now that's the way, and then if I add global events on top of that, there's a global events manager on top of that. That was like a global thing on the server. Now, I've said global multiple times here. Every single one I said, every single time I said global is not compatible with server meshing because we don't have a global entity setup, right? And so what needed to happen is a fairly large engineering task. I hate that we just said refactor, that we branded this as refactor, because it's really a new core mission system behind the scenes, which is completely outside of the game servers and does the orchestration of what a mission is, right? And the global flow of a mission. you have something to complete. There are phases, objectives, there's state tracking, there's requirements, and rewards, right? And so the mission system is what we call it. There's no longer a mission entity that's held on the server that just manages the whole thing. They all communicate to the mission system that then takes the logic of the mission forward. Even though all these mission modules, written by the Kid Rock of Mission, can do all kinds of fun things, at each of the different locations. So the fundamental work was to make sure that the mission system was functional in server meshing. That was really the part of the gameplay element that was completely incompatible with server meshing. Another piece that we needed to solve in the build for 4.0 and as part of the mission system is how markers work. And so markers are always a big issue. I've always
some
been
really
a big
good
issue in Star
information
Citizen since the very beginning. And with server meshing, these became even more problematic. So, let me state the problem. You're on a Pyro game server, and I'm on a Stanton game server, but I add you to my party. Now I want a party marker on you, right? Mm-hmm. My game server doesn't even have your star system loaded. Like, it doesn't even know what's going on, right? And so for that, we needed a piece of technology that would allow the streaming system to stream your entity marker on my server so I could actually see your position changing. And so we've built all of this in place, but that's a fundamental change to how markers work. And now I'm going to dive into why do we have that many bugs behind it.
It's almost like we need a replication layer for the mission system itself.
Almost, right? Like for things that are tracking objectives across systems, things like that, right? And so the way we call those things, like the markers, are independently streamable entities, which basically allows us to have a marker on an entity that's anywhere in the server mesh. Now that system works, right? It's in place. It's been fairly reliable, but that touches on all the markers in the game, and so a lot of issues came up for that. And one of the things that we have not tackled with the refactor is how missions are built. And to Elliot's credit, right? I think that
we're using Elliot's name, but there's
I'm
James,
using him. There's James. There's
Lars,
Nick, all these guys. But so the credit to all these guys, right? We have not provided this team with the right tools to build compelling missions. They are dealing with an archaic scripting system that dates back to a previous era that we are just about to finish modernizing by replacing to give these guys modern tools and modern approaches. And so going back to markers, the markers are completely managed by game designers and set and removed and displaced and whatever. And that makes for very complicated systems and logic that's not very robust. And so that's why even with a robust marker system, because the markers are managed a bit ad hoc in mission scripts, it makes it really complicated to follow. Like, I remember distinctly when we did the golden ticket event, which that was the whole mission, was like, there's a marker on the ticket, right? Well, now, the holder puts the ticket on his core armor. Now am I tracking the core armor? And then, how does that work? And so, and the mission logic had to manage all these cases. And so now that we've kind of finished the foundation for making the mission system function in server mesh, and we're going to obviously keep iterating on making it robust in this setting and fixing the missions to make sure that they also leverage the system properly, bringing back the missions that are missing, but also improving the ones that are there so that they're even more robust, right? We have started the engineering work with the new Starscript Foundation to rethink how missions are made from the get-go, to give Elliot, Nick, James, and all these mission designers the right tools so that they're not bogged down with details. If you saw the way they make missions now, it's like involved, right? And we want to make sure that these guys focus on the flow and not on the functionality they have to build so that programmers can support that content. So when we're talking about this change of focus, we're saying, oh, we're going to deprioritize features. We're also going to prioritize features for content as well, right? So that they can make content that's fun and reliable, so that missions.
And see, I knew they were going to say that because with those features comes like
fun and reliable.
The social,
that's what we really want to do for the mission part.
The social app,
that's going to be incredibly
all
important.
of those different things
the mission
that
stuff,
go
especially
into that.
This idea that of a narratively driven, content driven year. If we're not providing, 8 to 10 sexy new features every single patch, we're now providing, places to go and things to do instead. Connected to this narrative again. We'll talk more about the narrative on next week's ISC. Having that mission system seems like one of the larger. If I were in charge of the priorities, it seems like one of the larger ones. But we actually have some conversation about how you can affect that priority thing at the end of the show. Don't let me forget. Quantum drive.
Yeah.
Quantum travel. Quantum travel.
The bug that keeps on giving.
There's a lot of starting and stopping with quantum travel. A lot of repeating the same actions over and over to get something to work. And a lingering issue of fuel states not syncing between meshes or simply vanishing altogether. Where's my quantum fuel, Benoit? And of course, some ships themselves disappear during quantum travel.
Right. A rarer case, but possible.
Do we have our own Bermuda Triangle? What's going on?
Well, yeah, Jens did add some notes here and said, oh, if you find the Bermuda Triangle, please report it on IC. So quantum has been, since the very beginning, we put the first meshing test in place. That was the first thing, right? It's like, quantum stops when I cross a server boundary. That's what happens, right? Still. So the same symptom has been, again, triggered by multiple, issues.
You find 5 causes, the 6th one shows up.
Correct, exactly. And the latest ones are related to the resource container. So again, I don't want to dive too deep on this, but like entities have classes that define what they are, and they have components on them that define their functionality. So like, if I have a box with a health component, then the health component manages its health, its damage, and its destruction, right? So the entire game is made like this, with components that define things. And so the quantum drive is made up of multiple components, and these components need to deal with the change of authority when we cross a server boundary. And so there's a lot of entities intertwined for quantum drive to function. Fuel, resource container, and quantum drive. And we've been fixing issues with this transition on these entities nonstop since the beginning, because there would be a fix, then it would work for 2 patches, then a change to how we deal with chum points would come in, and then re-break it, right? And so we are in deep regression on a lot of things, right? And so to solve that, we need a lot more focus on validating the issues. It's like, yeah, we fixed this. Okay, let me try transition 1, 2, 3, 4. Like more, I don't want to say more QA, but more QA. We need a lot more QA to validate the fixes.
Okay. We're in the home stretch. How you guys doing?
Still
Again,
here. Cool.
If you need to leave, just, Pete, I'll drive the microphones back to you tomorrow. If you guys need to take off. So little behind the scenes here. I write a doc and all the things I want to hit and stuff like this, and I make myself little notes about things I want to remember that I hit.
Put some red
This
stuff.
one just says, prisons. I'm tired. What's going on? It's all I wrote for this. Prisons. I'm tired. What's going on?
So prisons is, and I've learned about this in inquiring a bit about the mission, the prison bug, right, is actually a mission. And it's a very old mission.
Yeah.
Right? So it's a mission module that runs the prison logic. And so for those, I'm sure everybody's familiar, but for those who are not, for some reason, there's a bug that lasted through preview and at the beginning of 4.0, I think, or it was fixed just before that, where if you were a criminal and you got caught and you ended up in Clutcher,
You got what you deserved.
well, I don't know. but you could try the prison escape, which didn't work because the mission logic that drives the prison escape is tied to this, and so the codes weren't outputting correctly. The logic was basically made for the old mission system. It was not ported. That's part of the refactor, and so it basically depended on when you get to that location to give you a new mission instance for your prison experience, which the new system requires that these modules are persistent and stay there, which accumulate the logic change. And so the logic becomes desynchronized with the state of the mission. So what that did is that you would literally do your time, either use smuggled in Adonite from somebody else or mine it, pay your due, and then the elevator would look forward to the front, to the prisoner who's paid us, blah, blah, blah. And then you would press the elevator. Again, elevators are back. Press the elevator to leave. And then it would never detect that the action area that you're leaving is actually triggering, which triggered the, leave prison logic, right? And so the guys have done a hotfix for this in preview, actually, at the end of the preview, I think, where they've moved the logic for this leave prison flow to the actual law component that's on your character. And so now we're guaranteed that no matter how weird this flow would get, it's actually going to be reliable.
You just said we guarantee it's going to be reliable. We are 2 hours and 30 minutes in this.
No.
You just used the phrase, it's guaranteed
All right,
to be reliable?
Let me rewind. It should be a lot more reliable because your player's always streamed in. So I have a fairly good confidence on this fix, as long as the elevator works.
That's a big caveat, Benoit. As long as the elevator works. We could sit here for another 2.5 hours and say all kinds of grand things and just be like, as long as the elevator works.
Maybe we'll put some stairs in prison. In fact, there are, but you need the prison escape code to get them.
All right, got like 4 more topics. We're done. Mining.
Yeah.
Sometimes minables are taking up to an hour to fully load in, making them rather impossible to mine.
Yeah. Mining has been actually a dreaded gameplay loop in 4.0. That's one of the reasons when we did the evaluation, whether 3.24 or 4.0 preview, whatever, we did take a look at mining. Like, is mining functional? Is mining in the prospector functional? Is mining in the mole functional? Is mining on the rock functional? Is hand mining functional?
Mining on the rock has never been functional.
It actually was intermittent in the first report, but
I hate the rock DS.
We've identified what we think is causing this delay. It's basically the conversion from the render node object, because the mining and harvestables are always in large quantities, right? They could be a very large performance hog, and so they're highly virtualized, and so there's a conversion from render node to entity that is, for some reason, very slow. And so we're diving in to try to figure out what's going on, but that's what's happening. So that's why it takes time for them to show up properly.
There's nothing wrong with the Rock DS, people, just with the people who like it. All right, I'm officially tired. The views and opinions of Jared Huckabee do not represent those of Cloud Imperium Games, Roberts Space Industries, or its subsidiaries.
Hey, we didn't talk about the mission reduce strict rep gates.
The what?
The reduce strict mission sharing has also been reduced with new strict rep gates. I
just thought that sucked. I didn't think you had an answer for it.
No, I got an answer for it. I went to the people.
You screwed up mission sharing and the payouts, and it's miserable and it's terrible now.
Well, so there was a bug that caused everybody in a given mission to get the reward for the missions, right? So that means if a mission payout was 10K, then everybody would get 10K, everybody participating.
It was amazing.
Well, so
I loved it when that
so the funny bit is I talked to Rich Tyrer about it, and he's like, I couldn't catch it before they fixed it. That's what I want. And so ultimately, it wasn't exactly what we wanted, but that's the direction we want to go in. We want to encourage you guys to play together. And so having those rewards divided is kind of a counterpoint, right, to get people to play together. Like, why would I group with you if I'm going to get half the payout, right? And so the thing is, like, the system doesn't work the way we want it to do. So the fix did go through, right? Because it was an easy fix and we had the right persons in place to do it. But that's not where we want this to be. We do want to improve that part.
We're at 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
And talking about all the bugs that still need to be fixed.
correct.
And the one bug we did fix was one we didn't want to fix.
I know, it's crazy, right? It's a
Yeah,
train.
You know, I challenge you, whatever you think about the project or me or Benoit, the show, you've never seen an episode of any kind of dev communication like this from any other game developer. Nobody's ever been willing to sit in a chair for 2.5 hours plus and be grilled about all this. So, all right. Just 2 more or 3 more.
Three more.
3 more subjects. 3 more subjects.
We got mining done.
3 more subjects. Yeah.
What's the next one?
Vulkan.
Yeah.
And NVIDIA driver issues.
Yeah.
So players who are using Vulkan with the latest NVIDIA drivers are reporting graphical artifacts and crashes. I know some of these crashes